Poet Wallace Seroti called it the Dark City. Alexandra lies just 13 kilometres from the heart of the City of Gold. One of South Africa's oldest townships, it is also one of the most crowded, most impoverished and most violent. But there's a buzz to this community, a dynamic atmosphere that transcends the squalor. This spirit presently fires up a struggle to improve the quality of life. In the past, it fueled passionate and organised resistance. When the Truth Commission went to the township this week, they heard some of the dark tales of the Dark City.
In 1912, a Mr. S. Papenfuss divided and sold his farm. The land was too far from the centre of Johannesburg to be desirable to whites, so he parcelled it out to black and coloured families. The resulting township was named after his wife, Alexandra Papenfuss. Although no one knows the exact figure, estimates suggest that today around 350,000 people live on this rectangular-shaped 1.5 square kilometres of land that slopes down to the banks of the Yukske River. Alex is a sore thumb, a thorn in the side of the affluent suburbia which surrounds it, a reminder perhaps of the price of privilege. The history of this township since 1912 reflects the history of struggle in South Africa at large. As in the rest of the country, the 1980s in Alexandra saw heightened militancy and organisation from the people and increased chaos and bloodshed inflicted by the state. The death of Isaac Derareng was the last straw. Derareng's funeral took place on Saturday the 15th of February 1986. After the burial, angry youth clashed with heavily armed police. This was the start of the 6-day war.
About 4 or 5 people died on that day of the 15th. And it then continued throughout the night and to the following day on Sunday. There were still street battles in Alexandra between the youth and the police and the army. And then that was the second day. And the third day, on a Monday, there was a stay away called in Alexandra to say people should not go to work because their children are being killed by the police and the army.
The way they killed my son, hitting him against a rock, and we found him with a swollen head. They killed him in a tragic manner, and I don't think I'll ever forgive in this case, especially to those police who were involved and who were there.
At that time, Ruben got a chance to go to the funeral, and I told him to eat because he did not eat that day. I went to the room to sleep, but I decided to make a tea first. Before I poured this tea, 3 boys came in and they told me Ruben has been shot.
I don't think of anything, if ever I was to be employed as a maid, that was going to poison a white man's children.
And after the 6 days war, then people said that we no longer want the police in Alexandra. And there was a campaign then launched, very peaceful one, to say we should not be socializing with the police. And by socializing, there were specifics. Those who were in love and or fallen in love with the police were told to terminate those relations, not to drink in the ship-ins in Alexandra, not to buy in any shops, not to be socialized with. Whenever police come into an area, people will walk out and not to be greeted, and it was one of the most successful campaigns, and I think that could have aggrieved them.
The 6-day war expelled the police from Alex. Black policemen were seen as siding with the oppressor, and they were no longer welcome in the community. Comrades and people's courts took over the keeping of law and order. But in April, the police came back to wreak havoc.
8 people were killed on that night, and amongst them our very weak leaders, and some civic member leaders who were killed, by that group. So they knew who they were taking.
Linda Twala had a lucky escape that night. He survived to testify to police callousness and brutality.
I was made a target because of my involvement there with the UDF and COSAS, because they used to hold meetings right here at my premises. And then as they were holding meetings here, my phones were tapped, and we had, of course, informers then who used to tell them about the whole movement, what was happening, and the police were well informed. And then they came here and bombed my house, destroyed everything.
But they failed to destroy his spirit, nor that of one of his daughters.
She happened to be here, and she always said, "Dad, I'm going to make sure that I get educated so that one day I can be a judge and sentence P.W. Porter to death."
Political violence continued in Alex up to the 1990s, when it was replaced by criminal violence, an expression of the anger of the have-nots. While the Truth Commission sifted through the debris of the past, signs of the urgent needs of the present were unavoidable.
If Alexandra can be a presidential project, I think it will be a best befitting honor to the people of Alexandra who have carried the flag of freedom since 1912 when Alexandra came into being.
The hardships suffered by women in the resistance to apartheid seldom reached the headlines. But the life story of Irene March is a monument to the great sacrifices made by the people of Alexandra since the upheavals of 1976. With the dawn of every decade, the life of yet another of her sons was claimed. She has lost 3 of her 4 sons. First was 16-year-old Philip, who was shot by police during the 1976 school uprisings.
It was very clear that Philip did not die instantly. He survived from the 18th, 19th, and he died on the 20th. What happened? Philip said, "No, it's boere wat my geskiet het." Why? No, don't you worry. Hulle tyd sal ook kom.
In 1983, Irene's second son, David, was picked up by police at his work and has never been heard of since.
Can you imagine every time when the child asks, "Where's my daddy?" If you were in my boots, what would have happened? How would you tell him, "Let's divert this thing, me being you, you being me"? If your son was abducted, leaving a small boy like this one, what would you say?
And then, exactly 10 years after her second son's death, and on the very anniversary of the death of her first son, Irene's third son, Joey, was killed by an IFP gunman in his backyard.
Until when somebody in the yard came and called us that, "Please come and see a miracle here outside." What miracle? Come, please. I'm seeing somebody like Joey lying down here. And for sure, when we went there, we found that brains have scattered all over. He died. Philip was shot on the 18th. It was on Friday in June 1976. Joey was shot on a Friday on the 18th in June. Unforgettable. So, I mean, you can't forget so easy. Really, even if the TRC says forgive and forget, yes, you can forgive, but you can't forget.
Irene March has accepted the deaths of her 2 sons, but it is the mysterious disappearance of David that will not leave her, that haunts her as much today as it did 13 years ago.
Or sometimes weekends I go to church if I like. Sometimes I just go to the meetings to be with other women, you know. More so, I'm one person who likes jokes, and I can make them. Yeah, so sometimes when I'm with people, such a thing goes away. Let them come and just give me my son's grave number, or they just show me where they threw my son. And those people, I want to see them face to face. We've got to sign a deal, myself and them, that if really they have killed my son, I want them to adopt his son. I want them to adopt Philip by taking him to college, educating him until to what standard he wants to be. They must adopt him whilst living with me, they must maintain him by taking him to school. That's my most worry.